Hey, Jen and Jenny, how are you guys doing?
Hi, pretty good.
So you all are the representatives for LUNAR, which is a video series and online community celebrating Asian American Jewish identity, also a JLF grantee. When and how did you realize the need for this community project existed?
Probably around the time that we realized that more of us existed. I mean, when Jen reached out to me, I didn't know any other Asian American Jews outside of like me and my sisters. And so I got this message on Facebook from a person named Jen, and I opened it and it was like, "Hi, I saw you in a video where you were talking about your mixed identity being Chinese and Ashkenazi Jewish. I am also that same ethnic mix. We should hop on Zoom and talk about it." And I was like, oh my gosh, my mixed twin. I found her. Oh my gosh, I finally found someone with my same mix, which as a mixed person is a moment that I recommend to all mixed people, is like find someone with your same combination of ethnicities. I mean, I only have two, so maybe for other people with more that might take a lot longer to find, but it's a very magical moment. So we hopped on Zoom, and this is like LUNAR's origin story that we always tell, is we hopped on Zoom and there were 5 of us who are all Chinese Jewish women, and we were talking about our identities and exploring this question of like, what does it mean that we are all Chinese American and Jewish, like this intersection. We've never talked to other people specifically with this intersection. What does this identity mean? Like, who are we? What is the stuff that we deal with? How do we, approach things? What's our perspective? So we talked on that, and it was very magical. And I was like, oh my gosh, I guess it makes sense that there would be more of us out there statistically, because, Asian Americans in this country are growing, mixed people in this country are a growing population, and just statistically it would make sense that there were others out there. But I just had this idea that like I was like the only one, and it was like such a weird niche of intersections that I shouldn't expect to find anyone else like me, or even that like wanting to find others like me was like asking for too much or expecting too much. So after we started with this initial Zoom call, we had the opportunity to turn it into a series with some grant funding. And along the way, as we were recruiting more team members and more cast members, we were just amazed at the number of people, one, the number of Asian American Jews that were out there in the first place, and two, the number that were so interested in a project like this and so eager to get involved. And just like the level of enthusiasm that people had every step of the way, filming the episodes and just in Zoom hangs, feeling that level of community it's the kind of thing that just like pierces through Zoom, because I feel like on Zoom, sometimes there's this wall of like, we're talking virtually and maybe it doesn't feel the same as like being in person. But when you have a community that is in such demand and like has this level of enthusiasm and connection, it just like cuts through the Zoom and you can just like feel it on the other side of your computer screen. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's kind of like LUNAR's origin story, and how I could tell that this project was very much needed was just seeing everyone's reactions at every step of the way. Oh my gosh, a project like this exists. Oh my gosh, there are this many of us. Yeah, we heard that all the time.
That's really cool.
Can I add like 2 things very quickly?
I will be
concise, I promise. One is like this moment really, like to answer your question, the moment that really sticks out to me from our footage is one of our cast members, Lee Harris, he said, wow, oh my God, I knew there were more of us. There's enough of us. Like that idea of like, we didn't think we had quote unquote critical mass.
Right.
Which is a term that's been thrown around a lot in the past few years around the Jews of color movement. It's like, is there enough of you? Why are you creating movements? Why are you creating organizations? How many of you really are there? But then what our reaction was, like what the reaction to our creation was like, there's more. Not only is there enough of us, there's more and more and more of us to come. So that was pretty amazing. The other thing I'd add is like, I had been around, working in the Jewish community or just like adjacent to a lot of Jewish organizations here in the Bay Area. And I knew that other groups for this particular kind of, with this particular kind of focus existed, like Black Jewish Liberation Collective, which I know is a grantee of yours, and then Juti Night Co. And I'm like, huh. So there are people talking about being Black and Jewish. There are people talking about being Latinx and Jewish. There's Asian American rabbis, there's Asian American leaders, there's Asian American voices in the Jewish community. Why doesn't this exist for us? You know, like I just thought, okay, if this model works for other communities within the Jews of color intersection, you know, this should theoretically exist. And the fact that it didn't was kind of astounding. When we did our research, the only thing out there for us as Asian and Jewish folks was like this book published by Helen Kim and Noah Levitt called True Asian. And even then it was more exploring the intermarriage component than it was exploring like sort of what comes out of like the children of those intermarriage, or like what exists beyond intermarriage and like mixed race children for Asian American Jews. Like what other ways can you exist as an Asian American Jew, right? So I was kind of like, I guess it doesn't exist and we have to go and make it. So yeah, that was kind of when I was like, okay, I'll reach out to Jenni. She seems like a great, you know, so.
Well, you know, I definitely, you know, as a Black Jew myself, feel that too. You know, I know I mentioned, you know, in the questions, I say one of the first things I heard when I watched you guys' trailer was the narrator saying, to be honest, we didn't even know there are so many of us out there. And it sounds like something that is really, has really stuck with you through this, as being like, oh my God, there really are. And I think it's one of the things that's so hard as a Jew of color is like you're even conditioned yourself when you go to services, right? Like me being in the Hillel world, to look at all the other people who don't look the same and think, oh, that must be someone else's non-Jewish friend too. And it's really powerful being able to like really get to the point where you know that all the other people are your people and are able to trust that. You know, so how meaningful was it discovering not just how many were out there, but how much they wanted to connect, like how deep that desire was?
Incredibly meaningful. I mean, most of us describe it as like finding our long lost family. Like whenever we're on Zoom calls together, it's like, oh, we're a family. It's just the best way to describe the community and our vibe. It also really awakened me to realizing just how invisible I was conditioned to see myself as an Asian American and as an Asian American Jew. And I think it's kind of like a self-fulfilling cage that we put on ourselves, where we don't think there's that many of us, so we don't ask for things, we don't like take up space in the community, we don't push for representation. We're like, why would I need those things? I'm like the only one that's asking for too much, because we think that we're not out there. But because we aren't asking for those things and we don't have representation, then we keep thinking that we aren't all out there, but we're all out there thinking the same thing, thinking we're the only one. So I'm so happy that, you know, we were able to launch LUNAR the past year and connect everyone, because it's just been this moment of, oh, we've all been out there thinking we're the only one. There are so many of us. We've all just been assuming, because we're so used to like invisibilizing ourselves. So that's been a huge part of the process, is like all of us learning to take up space together and create a space for us to take up space. And that's been really lovely.
So what were the most meaningful moments for each of you personally in the community gatherings?
Gotta think about that one. No one has actually asked this. I feel like no one has actually asked us that. We've done so many interviews, so many like articles, so many things, and like, yeah, I don't know if we've been asked to reflect on meaningful moments for each of us. Have we, Jenni? Maybe once or twice? It doesn't come up as much as, why is this needed? What is your vision? So
no, it's a great question. I'm thinking on it too. I think we've been asked broadly like about the meaningfulness, but I like that question about specific moments. A few come to mind, which out of privacy reasons, I'm not going to get into too much specifics, but because there are many different like backdrops for our gatherings, even though we've only been in existence for the past year. We've had like a Passover Seder together on Zoom, which was very joyful and fun and meaningful. And then we had a gathering space after the Atlanta shootings where we were all unpacking it and talking through our grief and our pain and our fear. So our community has been together through like a range of emotions and experiences, and it's really painted like this layer of trust. I'm not, painted was probably not the right word. I'm a songwriter, so I'm really particular about words. It's really kind of, I'm kind of torn if I want to say like forced us or enabled us to trust each other. It just like really gave us this layer of trust, because as a community, when you're put through all of these traumatic events together, it really causes you to like need to be more open and to listen to each other, and we're so fortunate that we have this space where we can feel comfortable sharing our experiences. And so it's been very emotional, like happy emotions, sad emotions, just a lot of emotional highs and lows. And that's really brought us together. But I think in general, just the most meaningful moments are just whenever somebody joins the community for the first time and they're like, just, I already said this, but just like marveling at how many of us there are and making the mental connections. You can like watch them reacting to it in real time and realizing, oh, there's so many of us. I was assuming I was the only one. Well, if there's this many of us, yeah, we need this community. Good thing the community's here. Okay, now that I can see that we are a whole community, there's a whole population of us. I like, it shifts your thinking into thinking as yourself, like speaking for myself, me thinking of myself as an Asian American and as a Jew, to now thinking of myself as an Asian American Jew, and being able to put those together and think through that lens, and then really think, okay, as an Asian American Jew, one whole thing that is comprised of different layers, but I'm one whole person. How do I approach things? Like, what is my belief system? How do I interact with others? You know, coming at it from that perspective and seeing other people joining our community for the first time and being able to start to make that shift of like not chopping their identity into pieces and just putting it together and being able to just collectivize and just all define for ourselves what it means to be an Asian American Jew is a really powerful moment for everyone. And it's something that I confront like every time I work on LUNAR stuff, is like, I'm so empowered doing this, but just seeing someone's like first steps into the community is really meaningful.
And what about for you, Jen? Yeah.
I'm like speechless hearing this. I don't have an answer that matches the gravity of that. I think I've been really vocal, especially among like trusted leaders and mentors, about how hard this has been for me. I'm 22. I never imagined I'd start something, much less be put in this really visible position of leadership. But there are moments where I like am like, what the, I can't. And Jenni has seen those moments for sure, like multiple times over the last year and a half ish. But every time, but it makes it so worth it when we have these moments of leadership and emergence where we show up for the community. You know, the fact that we exist makes more possible, right? So one example Jenni already pointed to was we had sort of a Shabbat gathering right after the shooting in Atlanta. It was supposed to be a regular bi-monthly Shabbat that our community just like does. But then Atlanta happened and we were all like, none of us like could work for like 2 days. We were like, oh my. Whew. And then 2 days after, I was like, 1 second, I have a question. Am I allowed to curse on this? Is this a thing that I can do?
Just be yourself.
Great. 2 days later, I was like, fuck. We have a Shabbat. It has to be the Shabbat of Shabbats. It has to be what, like, you know how we call the Shemitah? No, not the Shemitah. We call Yom Kippur Sabbath of Sabbaths. It has to be as transformative and meaningful as that. And the pressure's on. We got to make this happen. The RSVPs just started rolling in after Atlanta. Right. Literally, like, I don't know, 45 people were like, I have to be at this thing. And then I was like, holy shit, I have 2 days. So last minute pulled it together. I was like, Rabbi Mira, come do something. Rabbi Jackie, you gotta come. You know, Yoshi, everybody. I was like, everybody who I like met and was mentored by through creating this project with Jenni was like, I'm there. I have 2 million things to do that day, but I'm there. And then so we ended up having this sort of like huge cacophony of voices, like community leaders who like volunteered in service to lead a prayer, offer a poem. Somebody sang Ose Shalom, and it was like the most like gravelly, powerful, deep alto voice. And I was like, oh, I needed this. And then so like it was just like the fact that we pulled that off in 2 days and people showed up and we had like all these different containers for gathering. And I could see it really changed how people were relating to and reacting to and coping with what was happening. To have that gathering space, to have a Shabbat container, to have a container that's meant for rest and meant for healing and mourning, you know. I don't even know if we said Kaddish during that thing. And probably we did, right? I don't remember. But yeah, it was a moment that really validated that our leadership was needed, for me at least, that made me feel like, okay, leading this thing is actually important. This is actually changing lives. Like, we're here for a reason. And it wasn't just like some project that like I created because I wanted representation for me and like Jenni, you know, it's like a lot of people actually need this. So that was probably the most meaningful moment for me, is just seeing the way that our community coalesced around this moment, was able to heal and, you know, help each other. And like the fact that, not that this would not have happened without LUNAR, but just that LUNAR played a huge role in catalyzing the happening of our gathering.
And just a note on the healing, like, I think that is something that as Asian Americans, we don't give ourselves permission for very often. And so, at least for me, when that happened, I didn't want to rest. I wanted to keep working. I felt really guilty for resting, but I had to because I was just so broken and grieving, and we all were. And so it kind of forced me to like, okay, you need to rest, because you would have given this advice to any of your other friends, just rest during this time. So I was like, okay. So, and then going to that event and being emotional and processing it together, I was like, oh, healing is powerful in numbers. We need this, and we don't give ourselves permission to do this, and we need to start doing that.
Yeah, that's really powerful. On that note, I want to talk a little bit about the video series. For the unaware, season 1 of LUNAR is a series of 6 10 to 20-minute episodes centering the experiences of diverse Asian American Jews. So it's not just an online community, but they have some pretty cool content out on the interwebs. Tell me about the themes of these videos and what you tried to capture in them.
So season 1 themes, we have food, we have cultural values, discovering our identities, and like the journeys that people went to discover their identities as Asian American Jews. We have, I'm thinking back because I'm in the middle of working on season 2 right now, but I'm flashing back. We have an episode called Jewish Enough, Asian Enough, which is about like proving your identity and like proving your identity to other people and realizing that you yourself are enough. We have a Passover special episode, and what am I missing?
We love Passover specials.
And then we have our serious episode, which is about racism, anti-Semitism, the model minority myth, all the big heavy questions. We put those into one episode. So those are the season 1 themes. And then now we're in season 2, which covers episode 1, which just recently came out this week at the time of filming this, was What Shape is Your Identity, where participants visualize their identities as shapes or symbols and share like their journeys with identity in relation to that shape or symbol, which was really cool. And then other themes that we covered this season include media representation, religion, like interfaith identity, language, and like access to language, and then everybody's favorite things about being Asian American Jews, which very fun, positive note to end the season on.
Yeah, that's awesome. Gotta love the ending on positivity. Whose Passover special is better, you guys or the Rugrats?
on the toddler and young child demographic, maybe they come in the lead.
But on the whole, as Jen is saying, it's going to be you guys. That's what I want people to take from this. So what is it, both if you're an Asian American Jew or just someone tuning into your awesome channel or social media, that you'd like people to, take from the work? What do you want them to walk away feeling?
Well, first of all, if they're watching and they're Asian American Jews, feeling seen, feeling understood, the same feeling I've been describing all this whole call of like, oh my gosh, that's me. I understand that completely. There are others like me. That feeling has been the thread that connects this whole project. And so, first of all, we want Asian American Jews to feel seen and to feel like they belong. And then in terms of like our broader communities, Jewish, Asian American, just our allies, I guess we were telling the story of who we are as Asian American Jews, and we want to show that it's not one story. It's not even just 23 stories, even though we tried to fit as many cast members as we could take on. But just showing the diversity, even within this seemingly very niche intersection. We have folks who are Jewish in a wide range of ways, or who came to their Judaism or their Jewishness in different ways. And we have folks who are, Asian in different ways. Like there's so many ways to be Asian, so many ways to be Jewish. And because we get to showcase the broad spectrum, I think we're also making the larger statement that like Asian Americans are really diverse, Jewish people are really diverse. And so even within this niche intersection where you would expect that we would all have a ton in common, which we often do, but we also are very unique and we all have different stories and we all come from like disparate, cultures and experiences, and thinking about it more intersectionally.
Awesome. That's a powerful message for anyone out there. So thanks so much, Jen and Jenny, great names. If there are any Asian Jews out there watching or reading this interview, or if anyone wants to follow along on their journey, where can they find you?
Instagram or YouTube are the best places to reach us. Our Instagram is @Asian.Jews and our YouTube is youtube.com/AsianJews.
All right.
We're Asian Jews everywhere. You can't miss us.
Perfect. Yeah. Thanks so much, guys. And remember, Passover special, better than the regrets. Later now.